My name is Cole Bennett. I'm 39 years old, and I run a farming operation in Iowa that my family built over 3 generations. 70 years of work, thousands of acres, grain elevators with our name stenciled on the side. I still drive the same beat-up Ford pickup I bought, used 12 years ago, because my father used to say, a truck doesn't need to be new, it needs to run. He also used to say land isn't something you own, it's something you protect for the next generation. I believe that my whole life. I still do. But there was a 2-year stretch where I nearly lost everything he built, not to weather or debt or bad luck, but to a woman who told me she loved me every single day while planning exactly how much of my family's legacy she could take. It started on social media, which still embarrasses me to admit. A friend request from a woman named Whitney. She lived a few hours away, worked some marketing job, and her profile didn't scream money or status, which is probably what made me let my guard down. We started messaging. She never asked what my land was worth or what my house looked like. She asked about my dad, about harvest season, about what it was like growing up on a farm that had been in the family since before I was born. Nobody had ever cared about those stories before. Most people's eyes glazed over the second I mentioned crop rotation. She didn't. We talked for months before we met in person, phone calls late at night, video chats while I sat in the cab of a combine waiting out a mechanical delay. When we finally met face to face, it felt like meeting someone I already knew. We dated a few more months and got married the following spring. I thought I'd found the one person who wanted me and not what came with me. The first months of marriage looked exactly like what I'd always pictured. She got along with my mother, was polite and patient with the guys who'd worked for us for 20 years, and she started asking questions about the business. Not nosy questions, interested ones. She said she wanted to understand what I did so she could actually be part of my life instead of just living next to it. I let her sit in on meetings. I let her look at paperwork. She'd point out little inefficiencies, suggest a better way to track equipment maintenance, and I told everyone who'd listen that I'd married a smart woman who actually cared about the family business. None of it was real. Looking back now, I remember specific moments I used to hold up as proof that I'd married the right person. She once drove 40 minutes in a snowstorm just to bring me dinner because I was stuck in the shop replacing a hydraulic line past midnight. She sat with my mother for hours going through old photo albums, asking about my father, about the year the barn burned and how the whole county showed up to help rebuild it. I used to tell people that was the kind of woman you don't let get away. I had no idea I was describing a performance so convincing that even I couldn't see the seams. I didn't know it then, but Whitney had done her research on me long before that first message ever showed up in my inbox. She knew the size of the land. She knew what the company was worth. She knew I was the only heir to all of it. Her brother, a man named Trevor, who I met maybe 4 times total, was drowning in debt from investments that had gone bad. He was the one who told her marrying into a farming operation like mine was the fastest way out of the hole he'd dug for both of them. She didn't fall in love with me. She studied me. Every conversation about my father, every question about the farm, every late-night phone call, all of it was reconnaissance dressed up as affection. Once we were married, the plan moved slowly, which is what made it work. She never asked for anything all at once. She asked for access to company records so she could help organize the paperwork, which seemed reasonable since she was my wife. She suggested we bring in new financial advisors, people her brother recommended, saying our current guy was outdated and missing opportunities. I trusted her judgment. I didn't question it the way I should have. Employees who'd been with my family for decades started leaving. Guys who'd known my father, who'd taught me how to run equipment when I was still a teenager, suddenly had issues with Whitney and quietly resigned rather than deal with the friction. I noticed documents going missing and reappearing days later in a different folder. I noticed money moving between accounts with explanations that always sounded reasonable in the moment, but felt strange after I hung up the phone. Every time I brought up a concern, she had an answer ready. She'd tell me I was overworked, that harvest stress was making me paranoid, that I was imagining problems where there weren't any. And here's the part that still eats at me. I believed her over myself. I started thinking something was wrong with me instead of something being wrong with her. The whole thing came apart because of an accident. Our company accountant meant to forward an email to another advisor and hit my name instead. The email referenced a legal strategy involving marital assets and transferring ownership interests. I read it 3 times standing in my kitchen before I understood what I was actually looking at. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. I picked up the phone and called an attorney the next morning, and within a week, I had a forensic accountant going through every financial record tied to the business. For months, I lived a double life. I came home every night and acted like nothing had changed. I let her keep believing she had me exactly where she wanted me. While behind the scenes, my attorney and I built a case, document by document, transaction by transaction. What I found wasn't just an affair of the heart replaced by an affair of convenience. It was a plan. Whitney, her brother, and at least 2 outside professionals had been working for over a year to slowly consolidate her legal claim to the company, waiting for the right moment to file for divorce and walk away with a settlement that would have gutted 3 generations of work. I found messages between her and Trevor where she joked about how easy I'd been to manage. She called me the farmer with the inheritance in one message, like that was the only thing I'd ever been to her. I read a message where she told her brother she never actually loved me, that it was just easier to say it than to explain why she wouldn't. I sat in my truck in the driveway and read that message probably 20 times, waiting for it to stop feeling like someone had reached into my chest and pulled something out. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her with the messages. I kept going through the motions of a normal marriage while my attorney secured everything that mattered. We protected the land, protected the business structure, made sure every piece of evidence was documented and admissible. It was the hardest kind of patience I've ever had to practice, sitting across the dinner table from someone every night knowing exactly what they were planning to do to you. Eventually, she filed for divorce, exactly like we expected. She walked into that process fully confident she'd walk out with a piece of everything my family had built. She had no idea what was waiting for her. In court, my attorney laid it all out. Emails, financial records, deleted messages that the forensic team had recovered, testimony from employees who had noticed things and kept notes without me even asking them to. The judge didn't take long to see the pattern. He ruled that the marriage itself had been entered in bad faith, built around a financial scheme rather than an actual relationship, and rejected her claim to any part of the company. Investigators started looking into Trevor separately after some of what came out in the financial records. Legally, I won everything. The land stayed in my family's name. The business stayed intact. But I didn't walk out of that courtroom feeling like a winner. I felt like someone had taken a crowbar to my chest and left me standing there, trying to figure out how to breathe normally again. The months after the divorce were the hardest of my life. Harder than any bad harvest. Harder than the year we lost half our equipment to a flood. I stopped sleeping right. I stopped caring about the fields the way I always had. I let calls from friends go to voicemail because I didn't know how to explain what had happened without sounding like a fool who got played for 2 years. I started seeing a therapist, which wasn't something men in my family ever talked about doing, but I needed it. I needed someone to help me understand how to trust anything again, including my own judgment. Some mornings I'd walk out to the edge of the property before the sun came up and just stand there in the dark, thinking about how someone could spend 2 years pretending to love me just to get her hands on what my grandfather and my father spent their whole lives building. I'd think about every conversation, every late-night call, every moment I thought was real, and wonder how much of it, if any, actually was. There was one afternoon during that stretch when I drove out to the old machine shed my father built with his own hands back in the 70s, the one we don't use much anymore, except for storage. I sat on an overturned bucket for close to an hour, looking at his old tools still hanging exactly where he left them, and I asked him out loud, like he could still answer, how I was supposed to keep going after something like this. Nobody answered, but sitting there in that quiet, surrounded by everything he'd built with nothing but stubbornness and calloused hands, something in me settled. He'd survived droughts, a barn fire, 2 recessions, and he never once talked about giving up. I figured I could survive this too. It took time, more time than I expected, but I started coming back to myself. The employees who'd stayed, the ones who never left no matter how things looked, they were the ones who helped me rebuild. Not just the business, but my ability to get up every morning and do the work that mattered. I stopped thinking about revenge. I stopped needing Whitney or Trevor to suffer for what they did. What mattered was making sure the land stayed protected, the way my father always told me it should be. I still remember standing in the West cornfield one evening this past fall, watching the sun go down over rows I'd known my entire life, thinking about my father's voice telling me that land isn't something you own, it's something you protect for the next generation. For the first time in a long time, I understood that lesson on a level I never had before. Money can be recovered, a business can be rebuilt, but trust, once it's broken like that, takes years to grow back, if it ever fully does. Even so, I made a decision standing in that field. I wasn't going to let 2 years of someone else's lies define the rest of my life. So, I'll ask you the same thing I've had to ask myself more times than I can count. If someone spent 2 years pretending to love you, just to get their hands on everything your family had spent generations building, could you ever forgive them? Or would you walk away and never look back? Let me know what you do in the comments below. And if this story hit home for you, do me a favor and hit like on this video. And subscribe for more real stories about betrayal, family, and what it takes to rebuild after someone tries to take everything from you.